I'm Jade McNeil, and welcome to the Beespace Podcast, your bi-weekly dose of business and property realness. No hype, no fluff, and definitely no BS. Just honest conversations about what it really takes to build something from nothing. Welcome back to the Beespace Podcast. Now, this is the second part to my special birthday episodes. So, when I was sat there thinking, who could be my second guest to come and celebrate my podcast turning one, there was, of course, only one guy on the list. Hello, Andy Graham.
Hello, Jade. Thank you so much for inviting me onto the Beespace podcast. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing to have you. So for those of you that may know, may not know, I've spent many, many hours with Andy over the years, as was lucky enough to host our mastermind program together for about 3.5 years in Sheffield, which was the business and property mastermind. So we know each other really well, don't we, to be fair?
We do. And we know each other's businesses really, really well as well. You know, over time, that sort of stuff rubs off, doesn't it?
Yeah. And we always had a good banter at Mastermind because I think me and you are a little bit like yin to yang, really, aren't we? Like I'm the nice, happy, creative one, and you're like the ruthless, cold heart.
I'm like the guy from that kind of that series. Is it like The Apprentice, or I can't remember what it's called, but yeah. We have got a very different approach to business. I think that's fair to say, and actually quite a different approach to how we invest in property as well. But it's not that either of us do it right or wrong. It's just that we do it in a different way. And I think what we found, certainly what I found, was that that combination of our experience and approach to things was a really interesting combination, and we were able to provide a lot of people a lot of value in sharing that with them. So I miss our mastermind. I miss hanging out with you every month as well.
I know. It was like a transitional period of grief for me this year. I was like, I don't get to see Andy every month.
Well, I'm not sure Gemma feels the same. She's now on maternity leave, and she's in the house, you know, and I'm here every day, and she's kind of probably sick of me. So,
I mean, you know, so we've been sort of on, you know, did the mastermind together, been online pals for probably a year or two prior to that. So I think it's fair to say that we've both been around in each other's lives, and we've both gone through a lot of changes, personally and in business as well. And obviously, like you alluded to there, you've become a father as well this year.
yeah, I'm a new dad, and we're new parents, and as we're sitting here and recording this, our little girl is just under 10 weeks old, and it's been a really incredible 10 weeks. As you'll know, you've got a couple of kids, haven't you, Jade? Those first few weeks, you're just sort of figuring it all out, just trying to survive, and we have done, and we're here, and she's beautiful, and we're absolutely loving it, and we're just adapting to our new life as a family of three. But wow, does it does it put everything else into perspective? And like at time is this thing that used to exist in my life, and now it's just like this thing that I hear other people have, and I'm like, God, like where has all my time gone? Like before I know it, it's 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm like, it's just like a sieve. Life is just a sieve, and time just like disappears through it.
The thing is as well, like, with you, and I always used to say this to you, like I know you've got a lot going on now, like today we're going to jump into what the business portfolio looks like now, but you really built the solid foundations of that before having kids, before getting married, didn't you? And I've always looked at people that done that and been like, oh, because for me, I've done it whilst been babies, like literally hanging off me. And it's just made it so like difficult at times. I've looked at people who do have that flexibility of having their own schedule. And I'm like, I'm so envious that you can get stuff done.
Yeah,
because I can't.
Time is when I sit with people that I mentor. One of the things that we often look at quite candidly is the resources that we all have, the resources that we don't have. I'm yet to meet anyone who's got everything that you need to build a really successful business in abundance, and time is one of those things that is so often undervalued. In the sort of the sense of what it can enable you to do, and there is a huge advantage when you don't have dependence. You've got more time. You can get up early and do those extra hours. You can work late and do those extra hours. You can do the weekends. You can sit for 12 hours a day, and it is different when you've got kids and responsibilities. And for me, it was a really conscious decision and Gemma, she's got a great career herself. We wanted to get to a certain point before we, lost some of that flexibility.
Yeah.
And there was also things just on a personal level, well outside of business. And to be honest, the business stuff and work is so we can do the other stuff, but we
Mm.
wanted to travel and we wanted to enjoy life and we wanted to do other things. But the way that we've done it has worked really well for us so far, anyway. And I guess we'll just see how the near future goes, and maybe we'll add to our family, and maybe time will continue to disappear even more so, and who knows where we'll end up, but. Yeah, we're just kind of finding a new balance with everything, but really, really enjoying things now.
And you're an adult now, right?
I mean, I can't believe that you can go into hospital, you can have a baby, and like they just let you walk out as if all of a sudden you are responsible for
Yeah.
a tiny person's life. And you're like, oh my God, like I don't really know what to do. You guys understand? You guys know that I have no experience doing this, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really, really crazy thing. But I mean, what a great thing. And we feel incredibly blessed that Isla is well and she's healthy. And I think as far as babies go, she's been a really good baby so far. So she's
Oh,
not,
good. Well, long
you
may
know,
that continue.
absolutely. I'm touching wood as I say that. Absolutely.
Otherwise, you and Gemma will like wake up one day and be as old and wrinkly as me.
I'm getting there. I am 40 next year, so trust me, I've started. I finally now that the literature, the stuff that I'm reading, has taken a bit of like a different path. I find myself now like looking at how to stave off things like Alzheimer's and what are the implications of high cholesterol, and I'm looking at like the croissant that I like a pastry, and I'm often thinking, maybe I'm getting on for 40 now. Maybe it's time to actually cut back on some of the carbs and like get healthy before it's too late. So I'm
It
starting
is,
to
it
think,
is, it is a thing. And I remember your birthday in December. I was like, "Is it your 40th?" You were like, "No."
no, I was 38. I was 38 in December, just gone,
Yeah.
but I'm obviously 39 this year and then 40 next year. So, I think about a lot of stuff with a very long time horizon.
Yeah.
And as you know, and we'll probably talk about this today, I like to plan. It's a big part of. I actually enjoy planning, and I have found certainly from a personal perspective, like that planning um, has allowed me to achieve much better results than what I was able to do when I was younger and I didn't plan. I just did not prioritize planning. And I take the same approach to life and business as well in equal measures. So yeah, I try and kind of do that wherever I possibly can, really. But it's yeah, now my priorities are starting to change as I do get a bit older and I've got slightly
Mm,
different responsibilities.
absolutely. So let's jump into it then. So let's jump into kind of where you're at right now in terms of like your business portfolio. And I want to know where you are now, but to put a bit of context into the conversation, kind of where it all started from, because you
Mm.
you were not, born into a property development led family. It wasn't what you initially kind of did as a career. So kind of like, where are we at and how did it start?
Mm. I think my story it did begin on a building site. My uncle was a builder and he was a really incredible builder. And uh, one of those builders that we see less and less often now, the kind of real sort of jack of all trades, master craftsman, could turn his hand to the construction element, the joinery, really understood the building trade inside out. And as things have changed over the last few decades, builders, as we typically know them, have started to specialize more and more. And you see that when you're packaging projects up. But I spent time on the building sites, with my uncle, and I remember being quite young. My dad and my uncle were very close, and they, through our childhood, mine and my sisters, they did self builds. They did three or four self builds. My dad certainly wasn't a developer. My uncle wasn't a developer, really. He was a builder, but they did a few developments for themselves. They were kind of smart enough to understand the benefits of leveraging the skills that Frank had. And I would sort of spend time on the sites, and playing around in the foundations. And I remember that quite vividly now, watching the bricklayers. And I think there was something then, a seed that was sown. I just found this sort of interest in buildings and property. But as I got a bit older and I went off to university and things like that, I suppose my attention drifted to things that that kind of other blokes enjoy more, and football and sport and women, and I ended up on a fairly generic career path, I would say, probably for lack of having any more clarity and having any sort of a plan when I was at school and college. I was pretty good at school. I got pretty good grades, but I didn't have to try particularly hard to get them. And I didn't give a huge amount of thought to what I wanted to do. So when it came to making that decision about a career at college and before university, I sort of went with what was a bit of an easy fit at that time, and I enjoyed my sports and I enjoyed sort of, biology, and I was thinking about maybe going in the medical direction, but I probably wasn't cut out to be a doctor, so I ended up being a physio. And whilst I enjoyed a lot of what I did as a physio for several years as as a professional in my career, it just did not engage me enough.
Mm.
It couldn't hold my attention. I found that it didn't test me. Um, I would, I like to think, in long time frames, and I found it difficult to think beyond sort of 5 years in that career. I could get some promotions or I could specialize, and I did do that. But there's only so far you can go, and I could see by the time I was going to be 30, I'd have pretty much topped it out. The only place you could really go is maybe to a national team or like a Premier League club, and that wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I started to lean more and more into property. As soon as I finished university, I decided to buy a property because I'd been a student. I'd lived in accommodation as a student. I could see that what that probably amounted to for my landlord. I thought, I want a bit of that. So I just, quite naively had a go, bought my first property. I borrowed money from my dad to do that. And I mean, it's crazy looking back now that he would have given me that. And I think it says it's a huge testament to him because he trusted me and also wanted to see me succeed. But there was, a very good chance that that money was going to disappear and it was all going to turn out pretty terribly. Unfortunately, it didn't. It sort of went okay. And at that time, I was living in Cornwall. That's where I decided to take my first job as a physio. Did my first project, first HMO. I turned it into a 5 bed. Um, Everything was a little bit easier back then, I'll be honest.
Mm.
You didn't need the experience you need now. There wasn't as much scrutiny or stress testing. It was right at the bottom of the recession. I didn't really know much about what that meant at the time. But I think my naivety was actually one of my superpowers at the time.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because now I do plan a lot and I teach people to plan a lot, and it's incredibly important. But there is this sort of like hidden sort of value in sometimes just not always knowing uh, what might happen. Sometimes it'd be pretty easy to convince yourself out of doing deals. So, I was fortunate enough that that first deal did go okay, and over a few years it matured, and I earned a nice income off it alongside my physio income. But I just sort of carried on, just sort of bumbling through my early professional career. I did one or two more HMO deals. And at about 26, which is just over 10 years ago now, I had a bit of a life-changing event. I think you know about this, Jade, and I
Mm.
have talked about it on the podcast, but I wasn't feeling great. And I won't labor the story, but to cut it short, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I was incredibly fit. I was surfing all the time at that point in my life, and this was just a huge shock. I couldn't believe it, and not just for me, but for my family as well. And it coincided with me sort of really sort of getting to that a point of frustration with my professional career, just not finding that I just wasn't content. It just was not fulfilling me. And my symptoms initially had been boiled down to stress, but as it turned out, that wasn't necessarily the case. Actually, I did have thyroid cancer, although I probably was also stressed.
Mm.
And just before I was diagnosed, I decided to kind of pack the physio thing in for a period of time at least, and go off to Canada to get out to the mountains, which is my most favorite thing to do in the world. Yeah, I love to be out there in the mountains. So I ended up having treatment. I ended up getting out to Canada in the end, but that event, just was so it had such a big impact on me. It made me think completely different about everything,
Mm.
not just life. It made me think very differently about my career. And actually, what I surmised from it is I'd taken some risks in my life to that point, and most of them had paid off quite well, fortunately. But there was definitely areas of my life, particularly my career, where I hadn't really taken any risks. I'd taken a pretty low risk sort of route to being a physio and kind of sort of gradually specializing. And I decided to kind of flip things on its head. Um, when I'm out in the mountains, I love to go fast. I'm not, I like, I kind of love that. I like to go fast. I like to charge. I do like taking those sorts of risks. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie. And I started to apply some of that to my own life. And I came back from Canada completely refreshed. And I decided to go after the business thing full time. And that's exactly what I did. And it was hard because when I put the physio career down, or certainly I wasn't doing it full time, a certain amount of my income dropped off, and then it was difficult to lend, and prices had been going up over the previous years. So immediately I kind of stumbled into the challenges of, okay, well, how do you actually buy more property? This is actually going to be much more difficult than I had really anticipated. So I had to think quite different about stuff. And it was at that point that I realized I needed to build a business out of property. And I suppose that's when I went from trying to be a landlord and build a bit of a buy-to-let portfolio to actually building a proper property business. And I suppose the kind of the start of that phase of life was starting my investment and management agency, and everything sort of changed at that point, really. I I built an investment and management agency. We did some really interesting things. We raised huge amounts of money on one of Europe's biggest crowdfunding platforms, and built a very good cash and income generating business that required much less capital than buying assets. So we were doing a lot of management. We were doing a lot of leasing, long term leasing, a bit like rent to rent. We were doing a lot of investment work for private clients that wanted to buy HMOs, like I was doing for myself. I made a lot of money doing it, and I also found it was a great way to build my experience and my contact base. And a lot of things just sort of blossomed for me from there. And it opened the door to so many more opportunities. Those opportunities eventually became more opportunities to buy my own stuff, to generate more income. And gradually over time, I just continued doing that and steadily building my own portfolio, steadily building my business. And I exited that business a couple of years ago now. And since then, that kind of opened the door for my next phase, which you touched on earlier. I've got my training and education business on the roadmap of the podcast, which some of your listeners might know about, and developing and taking my sort of property specific interest to a different place still, which was a personal challenge and also part of a much bigger and longer term plan to create a different type of wealth for myself. And that brings us to today, which is a combination of running my buy to let and HMO portfolio, developing and for capital gain, and also running my training and education business, which is a really good cash and income generating trading business.
So let's talk firstly about your development business now, the incredible Arcvelop.
Mm.
I'm always happy to share on social media. Um, I've got a lot of client, one-to-one mentoring clients, and we talk about kind of self-comparison and looking at content and making the content feeling bad and how you deal with that in that moment. And I work with a lot of people on that subject. However, when it comes to seeing the Arcvelop stuff come on Instagram, I'm like, yeah, that makes me feel terrible. It's so amazing. I'm so jealous and envious of those projects because they are insane what you guys are doing. So, like, paint the picture for me. Like, who's in it? What does it do? Where is it? What's the kind of objective with the business?
Yeah. So AIG, Arcvelop Investor Group, is a development company that myself and my two business partners set up. You obviously know both my business partners, Jade. One of them is Mike Clay, and one of them is Mark Turnier. Now, I interestingly, just very briefly touching back on that experience of building my businesses and finding that other things blossomed, part of which was my network, the connections to people I had and opportunities. Mike and Mark were both people that I met through that process, on my kind of my journey in sort of navigating the early sort of property and investment. And we clicked, and I was, I think, intelligent enough to see how intelligent Mike was and how intelligent Mark was, and also see the skills and experience that they had. Mark himself is an architect, and I knew I wanted to develop, but I also knew that I was never going to make a good developer. I did not have the skill set and the experience to do the sorts of projects that I really wanted to. It was always clear to me that that type of business for me was going to be much better and much more successful if I could partner with the right people.
Mm.
And that's exactly what I did. And, I knew Mark and Mike for a number of years before we actually decided to do anything together. And of course, we did a first project, sort of test the water. That went well. Let's do some more. And I think that's a good way to start any partnership.
Mm.
We didn't really start with the plan that we have now. That plan has evolved. But in essence, we work together as a partnership to acquire sites primarily for conversion into residential accommodation. And we do that in different parts of the country because we're all based in different parts of the country. We do it in Kent in the southeast, and in Norwich in the east, and we do it in north of England. And so we've currently got a site in Sheffield, and we harness all of our skills and share various responsibilities within the business, and we focus on acquiring those sites, getting them through planning, finding the funds to actually buy them and then develop them, bring them to fruition, tenant them, and try and keep hold of as much as possible. And that short summary might make it sound like it's quite easy, but the reality is it's exceptionally difficult, and there are a huge number of moving parts. So actually, AIG is a really big and really important part of my, I suppose, everything I do in business now. And it also gets a huge amount of my attention and focus because it commands it. And that business is not at a stage at the minute where any of us could just walk away for a number of months and just leave it and expect it to continue on the same trajectory. It really is quite dependent on us as kind of like founders at the minute, and that's going to be the case for the next few years. But the objective is just to build great buildings, create a lot of capital value, create really incredible homes for people. And we want to do it our way. We're not prepared to compromise on the design and on the spec and on the location. We've got a really particular product in mind. And that's something that we're all really, really passionate about. And we're hoping to keep doing that for many years. And I guess, time will tell whether or not we're able to do that. But certainly today, that's certainly the vision.
So the buildings that you're working on are significant, aren't they, in size? And like development, like planning uplift that you're gaining on these buildings. Like, just give me a bit of an overview on some of the projects at the minute, the live projects.
Yeah, they are getting big, and that has changed, and actually that's not something that's happened accidentally. That's something that we really sat down as a business and looked at, and we discussed, and we proactively made a decision to change. We started with smaller projects, and what we found was that it took us the same amount of time to do that project as it probably would have a project twice the size. But we actually had to deal with a contractor that was more befitting to a smaller project. They had less people on the payroll, they had less in terms of management infrastructure, and all of those translated into challenges for us as a developer. Those sorts of gaps,
Mm.
ultimately need to be filled, and we found that we were often filling them. Um, we also recognize that our strength is actually not in that element of managing contractors and sites and project management. That's not really what we want to be doing or even the best at. What we're really good at is acquiring and adding value through planning. We're really good at raising finance. And we're really good at making deals happen at the start and at the finish. And actually, that's what we wanted to continue focusing on. So it's quite clear that if we wanted to keep a hold of things and if we wanted to work with bigger and better contractors that made our lives a little bit easier, we actually needed to be looking at larger schemes.
Mm.
So we proactively started to do that. So we went from sort of 10 scheme developments to, for example, one that we're doing at the minute, which is more like 24 units in phase one, and then another 13 to follow. So, sort of 37-ish units, something like that. That's a significantly bigger project, but ironically, and arguably easier to run than a smaller project like 10, certainly for us. And that's, I think, where we're really comfortable. We do schemes a little bit smaller than that. We do schemes a little bit bigger than that. And I think something else we're quite clear on is that we want to develop in a ratio of about 2 to 1 conversion to new build. So we don't particularly like new build. We prefer conversion. It's more straightforward. It's easier with planning. It's more predictable. And we don't really want to build up. We want to build laterally. It's
Mm.
easier to divide lateral buildings into blocks, it's easier to then aggregate the values, which allows you to maximize your ability to get out of the deal at the end and try and extract the best economics that you can for it. Building up also has other complications like you need certain misting systems for fire regulations, and then there's all sorts of things obviously about cladding. So we have a really clear niche that we target. And does every building fit into that? Of course not. There's got to be some flexibility, but generally speaking, that's what we're trying to do. And the ultimate outcome is to build, like I said, those really well designed um, residential accommodation units that people really want to live in, that we're really proud to hold, that generate a really good ongoing income that we can hold for a long time. We're planning to hold 10, 15 years as a minimum.
I mean, the thing is, you talk about it and it just sounds like so, like almost quite straightforward to execute. But I'm probably guessing that projects those kind of sizes in three different locations, lots of turning cogs, you must have had your challenges along the way.
Oh, I mean, I'm really glad you said that because I actually wouldn't want to sit here and glamorize development. I've
Mm.
said, quite open and honestly on my own channels a number of times, I wouldn't develop, even in partnership, if I didn't have my other stuff going on, if my own portfolio, my own businesses. Um, fortunately, my wife Gemma, she's got her own really good career, and that actually is really important. There's a huge amount of risk in developing, and
Mm.
one thing that really does frustrate me. I'm used to the anti-landlord rhetoric. Of course, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've heard everything that you can imagine from tenants and the parents of tenants, and the Daily Mail trying to write stories and stuff. And the one thing that really frustrates me is not that stuff, because I know there is a skewed opinion of housing in our country, but it is that developers shouldn't be allowed to profit from developing.
Mm.
And it is fundamentally because people do not understand the risks involved. We get paid for taking risk at the end of the day. And I think it is only right that if we are successful, we get paid well for that risk. Um, but that risk presents in so many ways. Some of the ways that you might think, and the obvious stuff, like not getting the valuations you expect, or a build program taking longer or costing more than you expect. But there are so many other things that I mean, I could just list just from the last few days. Finding things underground that you don't want.
Mm.
Piling the ground and finding that your concrete's leaking, and I tell you, you can spend a lot of money on concrete. You can spend thousands of
Amen.
pounds on
Mm.
concrete in a matter of hours, that you just didn't necessarily plan or expect. People that want to start making claims and against rights to light and things like that. There's a huge number of complications. The complexities of lending on larger buildings and blocks, relationships with banks, how values are determined, aggregate values, block values, the stress testing. You might have really high value units, but what are the rents doing in relation to that? The exit scenarios, just search results. There's just so much stuff that can present as problems, and it does honestly bring challenges every single day. And I think in a kind of sadistic way. I like the challenges. That was actually what I was yearning. That was what I didn't have in
Mm.
my professional career. It was quite prescriptive in the end. As a physio, what I have now is a challenge, or challenges every single day, and I love that, and I thrive on that, and I like solving those problems, and I think that that gives me a huge amount of fulfillment. Of course, I want to make sure that we can always solve those problems, so we have to be exceptionally careful. But developing is not for the faint-hearted. It's also not to be done, with a sort of one foot in, one foot out approach. You have to
Mm.
be fully focused on it at all times, because the numbers can get pretty big, and your risks and the liabilities, and yeah, there's some pretty serious stuff there. So you've got to take it all really, really seriously. It's very different to just buying and refurbishing a HMO and hoping to get a good valuation at the end. So
Mm.
whilst it's incredible, and I absolutely love that business. I wouldn't want to sit here, and it'd be unjust of me not to really kind of point out that it's not for everybody.
Mm.
You've got to think very carefully about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and who you're going to do it with. because it's going to take an awful lot to do it successfully.
Yeah, yeah, I think you might have just put me off there. This episode of the Beespace Podcast is kindly sponsored by the wonderful people at Landlord Furniture Co. Specialising in a huge range of high-quality bespoke furniture, Landlord Furniture Co. provides durable pieces designed to last in your rental properties. If you're searching for the perfect furniture to attract professional HMO tenants or need more resilient pieces for your student accommodations, considering cost-effective furniture packs for a larger property or looking for something more personalised to elevate your serviced accommodation brand, whatever your need, Landlord Furniture Co. will craft a solution for you. You can say goodbye to rubbish old flat packs and start investing in a luxurious experience for your tenants. Backed by a 3-year warranty and exceptional customer service, they really are the smart choice for any landlord or property developer out there who takes their properties, their tenants and their business seriously. So ready to transform your spaces with Landlord Furniture Co. and ensure that your investments stand out in the market? Visit Landlord Furniture Co. today at www.landlordfurnitureco.co.uk, or you can head to their showroom, which is in Oldham, or find them over on Instagram at Landlord Furniture Co. Now, let's get back to the episode. So you kind of touched on it around the financing. I know you guys have raised a fair amount of money, haven't you, to put into the development business?
We have. And, you and I, this is something that we've talked about a lot. We've taught a lot of people on our own mastermind about this. I think there are three. I think there's two kind of really essential components to building any good property business, and one of them is your deal flow and your access to deals, and the other one is your access to finance. If you can bring those two together, and in equal measures, you've got the fundamental ingredients of something really, really successful. You've got to be able to keep that tap open, and you've got to be able to understand how to recycle funds through deals. But the art of raising finance is so important in business, and especially in property because it's so capital intensive. And I, from a very early age, so going back 20 years, understood that I had to borrow money to buy my first deal, and I had to pay that money back to my dad. I borrowed money for subsequent deals, and it if you can unlock it, if you can do that, and you can do it successfully, it does give you the scope to do so much more in business. And I've really focused on doing that for a long, long time. And I think that I've done that in a number of different ways. Part of that has just been developing my personal relationships and my personal network. Part of that has been what I've done online, building online channels and communities, networking with people online. I've got a lot, like a big community of people around me that I've never met, but can reach out to. And that takes a long time to nurture. It doesn't happen overnight. Couldn't even begin to tell you how many meetings I've gone with prospective investors, many of whom it hasn't been right for. I've nurtured lots of relationships, some of which have only come to fruition 10, 15 years on from when we originally met. I think that, again, I go back to that time horizon that I'll often place and things. I'll have a conversation with someone today, and I'm happy if we conclude, that there's actually nothing that we can do right now. But I won't for a second believe that might not change in the future. I'll continue to nurture that for a long time because it is those sorts of things that often further down the line will become fruitful. A simple introduction to someone who's been following your journey, who may have not even worked with you themselves, and makes an introduction to an important person, that can change everything.
Yeah.
So I've really tried to nurture that stuff, and I've tried to build authority and my profile. I have been really consciously careful of protecting my reputation. I think that's I think so important now, and I think so many people overlook how valuable that is, not just today when they're doing something, but actually what someone's opinion of that might be in the future as well. I'm not saying we're all perfect, of course we're not, and I'm certainly not, but I'm always thinking about this when I'm talking to people, when I'm posting, when I'm presenting deals. I don't want to damage my reputation or credibility or anything like that at any point. I want to continue strengthening it. But it's a conscious activity, Jade, that I think about every day, every week, every single month, and I continue to put work into it. it's really clear. I could probably even break down how much time I spend on that exercise in terms of marketing, sending out emails, communicating with our community. The podcast that I run is a really good example of putting out regular, consistent information. And I think it demonstrates a number of things. It demonstrates a consistent approach to business. It's a great way to demonstrate credibility and authority on specialist subjects. It's a great way to let people know that you exist. And, there's so many different ways to do it, not just podcasts, but I really do prioritize it, have done for a long time, and continue to do that.
I think, my kind of version of that I always say to people is I'm really conscious about every time I open my mouth and how I show up in a business capacity. Like there's not one like moment or second that passes where I'm not conscious about what I'm saying and the effect that it's going to have for my brand, for my business. So I think that's definitely one of the things for you and I that we have always aligned on and really, saw the value of that for us. Um, you touched on there about your online community, so I want to talk a little bit more about that. So obviously you've got the incredible HMO Roadmap. So what is it?
There are the way to describe, I think, my that business of mine is it's like an ecosystem. It's this beautiful thing that's quite organic, and it started as something that I made happen. Like I did the landscaping of it, and I nurtured it, and I planted the seeds, and I watered it, and I introduced a few people to it, and then over time it's grown into this really incredible community that supports itself.
Mm.
I'm a member of the community as much as I am the leader of the community, and I love that about it. Someone can ask a question, and there are so many other people there and on hand to answer that question, to give their experience and their opinion on how they might deal with it differently. And we've got nearly 10,000 people in the wider community now. That's just in our sort of online groups. Our channel reaches much further, on other social channels as well. And that's our free community, and that was started without any intention for it to be anything other than a great place for me to network and build contacts and build or increase my opportunities to raise finance and potentially do deals. That was all it was ever meant to be. The opportunities evolved from that over time as it grew and became really successful. And when I was a little bit sort of bored in COVID, and that's when I started my own podcast, and that's when I built the roadmap. And the roadmap was almost a step above that, where the community is great because you've got lots of advice, but it's not structured. It's difficult if you want to go and find something in particular. It's a great place to have a conversation and network and field opinions, but it's difficult to find structured learning. So the roadmap was my version of what I wish existed when I just got started that didn't
Yeah, yeah,
exist.
yeah.
It was really hard for me. I was really naive, but I did nearly 20 years ago, you couldn't go on YouTube and watch a video about how to do, HMO, or listen to a podcast about investing in HMOs. It simply just did not exist. So you kind of just had to give it a go and hope it worked. Whereas now there's so much more available, and I wanted to create something that was unbiased. I've got an opinion and a way of doing things. It's not necessarily the only way or the right way. Lots of people in our community do things very differently, and it's incredible, and they're really, really successful. So for me, creating a platform that was able to provide unbiased and a really sort of extensive collection of experience was incredibly important. It was also meant to go deep. I'm a big fan of going, keeping it sort of an inch wide, but going a mile deep on things. I think it's easy at surface level to get things wrong, and there's
Mm.
so much free information and content and education out there at the minute. I think you've got to be extremely careful. In the roadmap, we go incredibly deep on all of the essential sort of components of how to buy and refurbish and fill and refinance HMOs and everything in between. And we wanted to do it also in a digestible way that was on demand. So what we did at the time, or what I did, was quite unique. We built a membership platform. Now, there were some membership platforms, but when I built the roadmap, the HMO roadmap, there wasn't, as far as I was aware, a single membership platform, that exists in the property space. There's a few now, but we wanted to make something on demand. You could pay, and stay as long as you want, and you could cancel the next day if it wasn't for you. I thought that was a fair way of
Mm,
extracting and offering value. I've never been a believer in having to pay £20,000 or £10,000 or £5,000 for a course that actually you might find not quite for you, or might not be as good as you think. We wanted something to be fair value and incredibly accessible and flexible. So that's exactly what the roadmap was. It was on demand. You could go in, you could watch your videos, download any of 100 resources, read and watch case studies from our community members. We've got vast amounts of content in there, but it costs about £50 a month. And if you join today and find it's not for you, you can cancel
mm,
tomorrow. We don't tie you in. There's nothing like that. And I just think that's an incredibly fair way of letting people transact with our business. And, we know that people that stay really value our products. And we know that some people who don't want to join or have joined and decided it's not for them, they don't. And that's fine. But we continue to make it better every single week because you add new content. And our community are a huge part of that. We have now become, the roadmap's now become an educational platform for the community, built by the community. I just
mm,
happen to be, the person that started it, really, and I'm really really proud of that. And we've had sort of about 600 paying members. It's we've won awards. We've kind of won best content provider last year at the HMO Awards. It's I think we've done a really incredible and really special thing. But my God, like getting the idea from sort of conception to reality was so difficult. And I mean, building a digital business as a property guy, it really was not easy at all. And I learned so much along the way. And again, it was having that long term sort of view on things that enabled me to do it because there's no way. I mean, it costs an awful lot to build the platform. It's a bespoke platform, and it takes time to let people know about that
mm.
and let people get in and test it. If I hadn't have had that longer term view, something like that would not have been successful. Now it's incredibly successful, and we have people join every single day without fail, without question, and it just gets better and better and better, which we're really really proud of. But yeah, it's one of those things that needed so much time and so much effort up front. And I look back at the younger me and think, oh, I'm really glad you did that, mate, because that's really that's paying off now, and we've done a really good
Yeah.
thing there. Um, but it would have been so easy not to do it. It would have been easy to put my feet up, enjoy the free time that I had in COVID to do nothing,
Mm.
play video games, and that's just not me. It's not my personality. I was looking for another challenge, and it was a challenge, but we kind of made it work in the end.
So, how many hours a week do you put into the HMO roadmap yourself personally, if it's so community led?
Mm, Probably an hour.
Okay, amazing.
Probably an hour. I've got, um, we've got a great sort of team of people around us um, that do everything that we need, from video editing to the creation of content. My, you know, Yem, who works for me and has done for a long time, that
Mm.
she's incredible, and she's been an absolutely wonderful sort of person to work with, and still continues. And Yem kind of now, because we've got the operations and the process and the systems in place, Yem sort of does sort of what I was doing.
Yeah,
She is
yeah.
able to pull all the strings to make things happen,
Mm.
which is so important. So actually, my input now is more so limited to, okay, well, what can we do to improve things? What do we need to change that's now becoming outdated? I don't need to be as involved on a granular level,
Yeah.
but I'm able to do things that kind of just step up, which allows us to continue following our sort of strategic vision of where we want to go and what we want to do. And also, a big part of my role, and it's probably not fair to say that I spend an hour on it, because strictly speaking, the podcast, you could arguably say, is a really important part of
Mm.
the roadmap, as is engaging with our community and writing my Friday emails that go out to our entire database. So there's other stuff around the edges, but in terms of physically running the site, it's not me. I don't do it.
Mm.
My team do it.
So, I couldn't get you on this podcast without talking about our favorite subject, one of our favorite subjects. Should we talk about social media?
Yes, I could have loved, like, you and I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media, haven't we?
Well, some of the best DMs I get are from you on Instagram when you're sharing something questionable that you may have come across online, and you're like, "Have you seen this?" And I literally, I'm like, "Where do you even find this from?" And it's all like property related stuff that some crazy content's gone out there, and you just think, "Wow!" Because like back in the day, it was such a simple kind of like platform of post a nice picture, get a bit of engagement, make some mates. And like now, it's not gone a bit mental, really, hasn't it?
I think it's evolved. What the engagement is so fleeting, and we as property investors and developers and business owners, we're a fraction of the a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the number of users trying to generate value on there, and getting that attention is really, really difficult, and it's become so hard, and I think well, the we've talked about this already today. I place so much value on credibility and reputation
Mm.
and authority. And there's no amount of money in the world that you could give me to do certain things and
Yeah.
to say certain things. I mean, I think one of the videos I might have sent you recently was, and I still can't get my head around this, but like someone doing like some property stuff, and they were like, they had goats.
Oh yeah, I was
They had
gonna say the
goats in
goat
it,
one.
and
Yeah.
like the thing is, I'm part of the problem because I love watching this stuff,
Yeah,
right?
and I always say that to you. I always say that to you. Well, you're watching it.
I love watching this stuff, but you know, if I was to do that sort of thing, does that speak to what I'm trying to achieve? It doesn't.
Yeah.
That's not going to resonate with the type of investor I want to work with,
Yeah.
or perhaps the banks that I'm lending with.
Yeah.
So as much as I enjoy watching it, probably not for the right reasons, but it has changed, and it's the honest truth is it's become really difficult to get that attention because the
Mm.
algorithms and the platforms just don't give you as much reach.
Mm.
So you've got to work harder, and you've got to think you've got to think smarter, and you've got to you got to again think a bit further ahead with everything that you're doing. Um, I would say we're not experts in social media. I've used social media really well over the years, and it's done what I needed it to do.
Yeah.
At times, do I wish it could have done more? Absolutely. Do I wish that our videos would have got a greater reach? Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like there is a layer and a level that we would have to get to maybe significantly change that, which then starts to conflict with my personal objectives,
Mm.
which I really try and stay true to. I've got some non-negotiables in my life, and business is only a part of life. My non-negotiables are I want to walk the dog every day. I
Mm.
want to train and exercise every day. If I can't do that, I kind of think, what's the point? If I
Yeah.
can't keep
Yeah.
myself healthy, I want to spend time with Gemma and Isla. And there's only so much time I've got, even with systems and processes and the right team and people in place. And some things just cannot be at the top of the list of priorities. And for me, social media is one of those things. It's not my absolute strength. It's not our strength as a business. Is it important? Yes. Is it essential? Yes. But there are other things in our business that are more important. And for me, turning up and recording my podcast and speaking to our audience that we've already cultivated
Mm.
over a long, long time is more important than me trying to come up with the next viral video that may or may not have some sort of positive impact on the business. So, I think I'm pragmatic about it. It's really important. We've got to do it, but I try not to overthink it, and I just do what we're capable of doing, what we're good at doing, in a way that we're happy to do it. And actually, the results speak for themselves. The business, my whole business group, has continued to grow. We continue to raise private finance. We continue to be able to deliver what we need from social media at the pace that we need in terms of the actual bricks and mortar assets of property and business. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And I can honestly tell you that I I used to do it when I was younger. I used to look at stuff and comparison is the thief of joy, right? That was me. I used to
Mm.
frustrate
Were you
myself
looking at
that
my stuff going, oh, I wish I could make my HMOs look as good as that?
I did. I
Come on,
mean,
be honest.
I'll be honest. The when you and I kind of originally connected was because you had to send me a message saying, "Hi, mate, could you kind of not just like copy my posts and stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fair. That's totally
Fair
fair
play,
enough."
mate, on your honesty there for telling that story, because that is literally how we connected.
Now, yeah, and because your stuff at that like was incredible. Your stuff still is incredible. And I like it's fairly new to Instagram. I had a lot more experience on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was like, how does all this like visual platform work? And that was back in the days when Instagram was just like
A
just
picture.
photos,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Um, and yeah, so you can, and I sort of very quickly, touched a few, hot plates and and learned some lessons quite quickly. Um, but I took inspiration from other people,
Mm.
and but yeah, it's just changed. It's just changed significantly since then, and I think every single channel has changed. But it doesn't. There's no good sort of complaining about it. There's no good sort of getting yourself frustrated about what the people doing, what you're not doing. I try to take a really pragmatic approach to it, do the very best that we can with the resources that we've got, um, and um, and I look at stuff for inspiration. And I
Mm.
look at ways to find and build connections and support people. And yeah, I do have a bit of fun looking at stuff, and sending memes and things to my mates. I do all the usual stuff that we all do on Instagram and
Yeah.
social media. But it's a really crazy world. Like there's so much stuff on there, and I just kind of think, oh my God, like how could surely people wouldn't lend money to this person? Like how could you?
Oh,
But the great thing about social media is like there is something for everybody. Like
yeah.
I am not the
Even the
per
goats.
yeah, like I am not the person for the people watching those videos.
Yeah.
Equally, like the people that watch these other videos that they're probably not the people that are watching my stuff, and I'm totally cool with that. And if time has taught me anything, it is that you never know who is watching, and I mean that in the most positive sense possible.
Mm.
I've been approached out of the blue by um, famous people, professional athletes, for Premier League teams, really incredibly successful business people that you wouldn't know that have exited businesses that have liquidated and had liquidity days and got lots of money. They're often lurkers. You
Yeah.
wouldn't know. They don't.
Yep.
They don't say, or they don't post, or they don't engage. And then one day they just reach out because they've been following that journey, and your message has continued to resonate with them. And
Mm.
I just, I get so much faith in that and the fact that that continues to happen that I, it isn't difficult to convince myself that we should just keep kind of doing what we're doing because it has been working. So, I'd encourage everyone to try and look at social media in the same way, but it is hard, especially when you're starting.
It is like I always say to everybody, it's a complete compounding game over a long period of time. Your content and your messaging, and my experience is exactly the same with yours. It's the lurkers that you don't know about
Mm.
that will then come up after like 5, 6, 7, 8 years and actually present some incredible opportunities. So showing up consistently, the messaging being right, getting yourself to be visible is just so powerful, isn't it? It's
Yes.
so, so powerful.
The word you used then was the compounding efforts, and
Mm,
we talk about that a lot, don't we, in the context of investment and
mm,
property? But it's absolutely true of your efforts in marketing and social media is marketing. And we've seen exactly that in social media, posting for a long time on Facebook and then on Instagram, and then having our, building a database and regularly touching base with our database with non-spammy content. Having a podcast that there's so many different things that do if you work hard enough and consistently enough
yeah.
culminate in really positive results. And I think that when you look staring down the barrel of maybe building your own social media channels or maybe getting started or trying to ramp things up, you've got to be able to have that sort of faith. And the examples are out there; you can see them, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but you do have to be really consistent.
Hmm.
And that's the hard bit, I think, for a lot of people.
Definitely. So, Andy, obviously, life's changed a lot for you with baby Isla coming into the world this year. So, in terms of becoming a father and, having multiple business plates that you're spinning, like how has fatherhood changed you and how you run your businesses?
Let me try and answer the two components of that. If it's on a personal level as a person, um, you know, Isla coming into our life has just been incredible.
Mm.
As we hoped it would be, and we feel really fortunate and blessed. And like I said earlier, it puts everything into perspective. Your priorities overnight, they change. And I think what I've learned about myself is that um, I'm happy to do that, and I wanted to do that. And I'm not sure that when I was younger, I would have felt the same. It was obviously the the right time in life for me and for Gemma to do that. And we've really, we absolutely love this time that we're now spending together as a family of three. Um, but I have had to reprioritize everything else. You know, I am no longer the most important thing in my life. Or, even Gemma and Isla, Gemma and Hugo. There's Isla now,
Yeah.
and she comes first, and so you've got to be prepared to adapt, and that's absolutely what I've done, and it's made me really realize so much of the value in what I've done is not monetary. A l- what do I mean by that? The ability to work from home, something as simple as that. I know
Mm.
many more of us work from home now than we did, but the ability to work from home, the ability to work on my own time, the ability to have the freedom and choice and flexibility. We're going to Scotland next week because that's where Gemma's from, it's where her family are, and it'd be really nice if Isla can spend more time with her grandparents and family in Scotland, and Gemma can see some of her friends from Scotland, and they can meet Isla, and she's got other friends with babies and things like that. Doing what I'm doing and 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 making the sacrifices that I've made to get to this point allows
Mm.
us to do that. If I had a job and a 9 to 5, we couldn't do that. We could not go and spend 10 to 12 days every single month in Scotland. It would be, impossible. So it's really amazing how quickly it is highlighted what we've been trying to do here as a family, and as a business owner, what I've been trying to do. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really kind of grateful for the younger me that did all
Mm.
of the stuff that needed to happen. And it's one of those things in retrospect, and I'm now really seeing, the benefit from it. I'm really thankful for. Um, it's given a whole new perspective to everything as well. My objectives have been gradually changing over time, but I've been for a long time much less interested in cash flow. It's there's only so much cash you can generate every month, before you can't spend it. We have a fairly modest life. Um, my plan is for some time now been building longer term equity and wealth, and actually what I'm doing now and having Isla really aligns with that. I
Mm.
actually am happy to spend less time trying to force cash flow, and I'm prepared to spend a lot more time on those longer term strategies like investing, like creating wealth through development, so that in 10, 15, 20 years' time, there is a big liquidity day. And I've talked about this a lot on my podcast, but that's what I want to do. So I just sort of reshaped and continue to reshape the way that I'm approaching my businesses now. And I'm not saying that I don't value the income generating aspect of my businesses. Of course I do, but my priorities have changed a little bit. Now,
Mm.
for a long time, it was all about generating cash flow. And then it was a bit more about cash flow and capital. And now I'm a bit less concerned about the cash flow, and I want to build more capital, wealth. And, I want to maintain that balance. I'm really proud of the fact that actually I have managed to maintain that balance. Um, getting this is interesting. 6 months ago, 6 months ago, when we had a pretty good idea when Isla was likely to be born, and I knew that there were certain improvements and changes that I could make to a number of my businesses that would give me more of this time and freedom and flexibility. So we started implementing all of that 6 months ago. Now, what I fully expected to happen was that did translate into me having more time and freedom and choice and flexibility, and having to be in the businesses on a day-to-day basis. And that absolutely happened. What I didn't expect to happen was that all of that work would also generate, more income, and we would do better as a business and as a group. December, January, and February were unquestionably our best months across the entire group. And actually, that wasn't my objective. That sort of happened because 6 months downstream from all of that work that we did, all of that efficiency and all of that
Mm.
preparation has just resulted in, much better results. So not only have I on a personal level been able to do what I wanted to make sure I was there for Isla and Gemma, but also as a business, we've actually done better. So in a weird way, I should probably take more time. I should probably spend less time on my businesses because we seem to do better when I'm not there. And it's weird, like there's these things in life that almost these life-changing events that force you to do things differently, and all of a sudden you realize actually there is a better way or a different way to do things. um, and so I continue to learn about all of this stuff, but I'm just really pleased that that it has gone the way that it has gone, and I'm getting to spend this time with Isla, and you know, Gemma and I don't feel too exhausted or too stressed. And like, and I
Mm.
know that, I know Isla's she's only young and things could change. And like, overnight she might, we might be up all night, every night with her. But I think given the circumstances, all of the ingredients have allowed us to create this experience that we could have only wished for like 10 years ago. And I think I've always thought that business is about so much more than just the money. Um, yeah, for us, that's what it's about. And our next big project is to do our own house. We're currently renting, and we've bought our new place, and it's going to be a year's worth of work to our new home, and then we'll have this incredible space to kind of bring Isla up in, which we're super excited about as well. So, um, yeah, things are changing, but things are only getting better.
When I spoke to you before about the new house, I described it as bougie.
Yeah, and I'm not bougie, and I don't like
You
Gemma's
are a
bougie.
little bit. You are
Je,
you are somewhere. You have to be
Je,
to design that.
Gemma's bougie.
Yeah. Is
Je,
it okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Gemma's bougie, and Gemma's got kind of expensive taste. So I sort of have
Yeah.
to I have to rein her in. I'm like, yeah, I like that door that you picked, Gemma, but that's probably not what we're going to be able to have. So
I'm just going
the
to manage your expectations there.
yeah, I'd have to do a lot of managing Gemma's expectations when it comes into costs and things like that and projects. Um, we're just so excited to have this space where we can
Yeah.
host and have family, and Isla can grow up safely, and we can enjoy and like do like we've been designing the island for the kitchen, and it sounds like it does. Thinking about how we want the island and some seating next to it,
Mm.
like it's so exciting because I can just picture us in the kitchen, and Isla at the table. We've created this little nook off the island that kind of come up with this sort of bespoke design, and it's so exciting to think about, because actually what we're designing is not just a house, but we're sort of designing our life,
Yeah, of
which
course. Yeah.
is totally different to designing a commercial project,
Mm.
for renting to tenants. So we're really we're kind of really in the depths of that at the minute, but really enjoying that process. And hopefully over the next 12 months I can finish that scheme off as well. And yeah, it'll be a nice a nice addition to our life at the minute.
Do you want me to give you a top tip, design tip for a family
Please
home?
do.
Number one thing that you need in your life is a designated area for like coats, shoes, book bags, like just stuff, wellies, riding stuff. Like, so we've got a boot room, which sounds dead posh, and obviously I'm not dead posh, but I do have a boot room, so yeah. And anyway, I love it because you just shove it all in. Everyone comes in, takes all the stuff off, puts. You don't have to look at it. You don't want to look at that. Not in that
No.
house. So that is my top tip.
Well, I think that's a great piece of advice, and actually, you'll be pleased to know
You've
that
got one.
we've sort of got we've got a utility that's actually much more. It's more of a boot room than just
Yeah,
a utility.
yeah,
It's quite big. It's not necessarily what you would typically or where you would typically design it in a house, because it takes up quite a bit more space than you would usually give to a utility. And we've thought exactly that. And like we designed even the windows so we can have a little bench seat under the window. And I just kind of love thinking about Isla sitting on there and putting little muddy wellies on and
yeah.
off and taking the dog out. So yeah, we're excited to kind of bring it all to life. But
Amazing.
and lots of sort of hard waterproof stain resistance materials. Yeah, like that sort of stuff now is all in the mix as well. And by the way, I don't think you can call me bougie. You've got a horse as well.
I've
You've
got
got a
two.
boot. You've got a boot room and two
I
horses.
do have a boot room with two horses.
I'm just a
Yeah.
man. I'm a man with a dog, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I battle the mud and the rain and all of the elements and the children, but I wouldn't have it any other way, you know that.
Yeah.
Andy, listen, I've absolutely loved talking to you today. Like, it's been wicked having you on my podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving me your time and coming on. Like over the years, you've always been one of the people that I've kind of come to and said, I've got this idea, what do you think? And you've given me some really clear perspective on do this, do that, think about this, and so on. And doing the podcast was absolutely one of those things. So thank you for encouraging me and answering all of my voice notes about how to create it. What do I need to consider? What systems will I need? What will the team need to do? Because yeah, it's been really fun and I've enjoyed doing it. So thank you for your support there.
That's welcome.
And yeah, for giving me your time today, Andy. If people want to find you, see your projects, how do they do that?
Yeah. Um, I'm pretty easy to find on Instagram, andy.graham.hmo. You can find me as Andy Graham on Facebook. You can come and check out the HMO community. That's our free community group on Facebook. Or you could join the HMO Roadmap if you're investing in HMOs and you want to learn how to either start, or scale up a HMO property business. Come and check out what we've got on offer. It's just an absolute vault of content and downloadable resources. It'll save you hours and hours of time and thousands of pounds in trying to do it all yourself the hard way. But yeah, just head to the hmoroadmap.co.uk and everything's there that you could possibly need.
Amazing. Cheers, Andy.
Thanks, Jade.
That's a wrap for another episode of the Beespace Podcast. I've been your host, Jade McNeil, property developer, mentor, and business coach. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite platforms. And until next time, remember, don't believe the hype and always keep it real.